Thank the distinguished gentleman from California for yielding and for his forceful advocacy and brilliant articulation of the GOP tax scam and all that it represents. It really is a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's the ultimate hustle. It's nothing but a classic bait and switch. It's a fraudulent Ponzi scheme. The notion that this bill is designed to help benefit middle-class folks and working families, those who aspire to be part of the middle class, is such complete fiction. When 83% of the benefits of the GOP tax scam will go to the wealthiest 1% in America. And we know that at least 36 billion middle-class families, if not more, will experience a tax increase. Medicare, as was just articulated, will be undermined. The deficit will explode, and our children and grandchildren are being asked to shoulder at least $1.5 trillion in additional debt to pay for tax cuts for millionaires, billionaires, special interest corporations, and big donors to our friends on the other side. Don't take my word for it. There have been members of this House who have indicated they needed to get this massive tax cut for wealthy individuals done, or their donors would stop contributing. We didn't say that. That's folks from this chamber on the other side of the aisle when talking about the urgency of jamming this reckless tax scam down the throats of the American people. And as the congressman, distinguished gentleman from California, Representative Garamendi, just articulated, the whole premise that anyone other than the wealthy and the well-off is going to benefit is built upon the fraud of trickle-down economics. When there is absolutely no evidence that trickle-down economics has ever done anything for everyday Americans. When Ronald Reagan cut taxes on millionaires in 1981, we didn't get explosive economic growth. We got an explosion in the deficit. When George W. Bush cut taxes on millionaires and billionaires in 2001 and 2003, we didn't get explosive economic growth. We got the Great Recession in terms of the legacy of the Bush economy. And then there was the so-called Great Republican Experiment in Kansas, where a Republican state legislature and a Republican governor massively cut taxes on the wealthiest top folk in Kansas. And was there massive economic growth? No. We got prison riots, overcrowded classrooms, and crumbling infrastructure. Those are the facts. That's what so-called trickle-down economics has yielded. And now, this fraud is being perpetrated on the American people. It's shameful. And it's our children and grandchildren who are going to deal with the consequences of this highly partisan effort to benefit the wealthiest amongst us. It's a raw deal for the American people. We're going to offer a better deal for the American people, focused on better jobs, better wages, and a better future, focused on higher pay, lower costs, and giving the American people the tools to succeed in the 21st century economy by focusing on a real infrastructure bill, real training, real community college opportunity, real tax reform for middle-class Americans and those who aspire to be part of it. And so I thank the distinguished gentleman for yielding, for his leadership in this area, and look forward to working together to deliver to the American people the better deal that they deserve.
Mr. Jeffries, thank you so very much. If you can stick around, maybe we can have a colloquy here and discuss this a little better. You and your two colleagues, Mr. Cicilline from Rhode Island and Sherry from Illinois, developed the better deal discussion. And I'd like to talk about this in the context of infrastructure. Now, in the next couple of weeks, the President says he's going to deliver to the Congress his infrastructure plan. Well, we know across this nation that we definitely need infrastructure. You just talked about it a moment ago. And the question will arise, how do you pay for it? This year, right now, the current fiscal year where we're talking about can we fund government before it shuts down, $150 billion was ripped out of the Treasury. It's gone for the wealthy tax cuts. So where do we get the money to pay for infrastructure? How do we do that? Here's my fear. My fear is that the wealthy 1%, top 10%, the big corporations, have already got their big chunk of the pie, 83% of it. Where do you go to get the money? I think that the proposal coming from the President will be to tax fees on folks that are using the transportation system. And who are they? They're the American family. They're the people commuting to work on the trains or in the buses or in the cars. And we need to think through how is it that we can do the infrastructure so there are better jobs, better wages, and a better life for Americans. If you can expand on the way in which the better deal proposal that we've talked about can accomplish that, transportation, education.
Well, thank you for that. And it certainly is the case that because of the GOP tax scam, because of the $1.5 trillion in additional debt that we as a country will now have to shoulder so that massive tax cuts can be provided to millionaires, billionaires, special interest corporations, and big donors, that we are not necessarily in a position to responsibly fund the type of infrastructure plan that the nation deserves to fix our crumbling bridges, roads, and tunnels. We believe, as Democrats, that the American people in that regard deserve a better deal. A better deal, again, focused on higher pay and lower costs and the tools to succeed in the 21st century economy. One of the ways that you deliver better jobs is through a meaningful infrastructure plan that is appropriately funded, not on the backs of working families, middle-class folks, and everyday Americans. It should be funded in an appropriate way. Those who can afford to pay should be paying their fair share. But we just went through a reverse Robin Hood process as it relates to this tax bill, and that's unfortunate. Now, I'm hopeful that we will proceed in a bipartisan way. The President has indicated that he thinks that would be an appropriate approach. We'll see whether that's a genuine articulation of a way forward or not. But we cannot repeat the mistakes that were just attendant to the process of jamming this tax bill down the throats of the American people and jamming us in a way that will hurt everyday Americans.